Hey everybody, this is the Swamp Cleaner, back with another video for you. Now, in front of your screen here, I'm just teasing what you see here, but in this video we're going to talk about Black Lives Matter and their little foray into social authoritarianism and how it has failed. And I'm going to talk about how we've gotten to this point where Black Lives Matter thinks they can give business owners in Louisville, Kentucky, a list of demands, and if they don't fulfill these demands, they will, make it a little bit, how do we say, difficult to work, make it a little bit expensive to work there. You might have some broken windows or some smashed pottery, stuff like that. Some kind of like mafia kind of tactics. I mean, where are the cops for that? I mean, didn't cops stop the mafia? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, cops are being defunded all over the place. But anyway, let's get into this video. Now, to better understand where we're coming from and how Black Lives Matter has gotten to this whole authoritarian like state of mind, you have to look back on where Black Lives Matter started. And Black Lives Matter pretty much started on a lie. Well, it was started not on a very good incident to coin your movement on, which is saying that Black Lives Matter. Trayvon Martin, I don't think was the best example of a black life to start your movement on. I'm just saying. I think a better black life to maybe uh, coin your movement on would be maybe David Dorn. What about that guy? Just saying. Anyway, but from 2014 to 2016, Black Lives Matter built its foundation, and its foundation was pretty much a foundation on a false narrative and rioting and anger, misplaced and unguided anger. I mean, in 2014, it really exploded. Black Lives Matter really came onto the scene because Michael Brown was shot and killed by a police officer in Ferguson, Illinois, and it was this false narrative that hands up, don't shoot, and that was the fuel that was driving these protests, these riots, that was destroying Ferguson. Ferguson was being burned to the ground. A lot of the businesses that were destroyed were owned by black people. What about those lives? What about the lives of all those of the families of all those people that might have gone hungry because they couldn't get food on the table because their business was burned down? Oh yeah, what's the whole argument? They've got insurance? No, no. But yeah, so I mean, Michael Brown was physically assaulting a police officer in his squad car, trying to reach for his weapon, and that's when he was shot and killed. He wasn't running away. He wasn't. His hands weren't in the air. It was a false narrative, and it just bloomed from that. It went from that to the riots in Baltimore after Freddie Gray was killed, and it was justice was going to be done. Those cops were going to be held accountable, but it wasn't quick enough. It wasn't fast enough. So people had to riot. People had to destroy. It just they needed instant gratification. And I get that. Emotions are high. I understand, but you have if you want to get justice. I mean, and here's the thing: these catchphrases don't do Black Lives Matter any good when saying no justice, no peace. That means you're implying there will be no peace unless there is the form of justice that you deem acceptable, because it's based off of their arbitrary standard, and that is forever changing, and that's one of the problems. It was misguided. It was they'd say these horrible things like pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon, or what do we want? Deceased cops. I'm being nice when they're saying that. I didn't actually say deceased. They said something else. But and they chant that, and they were allowed to roam around the streets chanting these things and and that's okay. That was largely protesting, but things like happened in Baltimore and Ferguson was driven by this false narrative that just was actually a lot of the time amped up by the mainstream media, which is a whole other ball of yarn, which I'm not going to get into in this video. But you have these false narratives fueling these fires, and then and this rhetoric just doesn't do any good to your movement. So it just leaves people with a bad taste in their mouth. So by the time 2016 came around and the Dallas incident happened, where 5 police officers were shot and killed by a Black Lives Matter supremacist, he was a black supremacist. He wanted to kill white people, especially white police officers, and they had to actually use explosives to kill him. They used a robot and like roboted it up to him, and then boom. That's how entrenched this guy was. This guy was nuts. But he was a Black Lives Matter supporter. But at that time, Black Lives Matter did disavow those actions. So I mean that was then, but remember, that was a long time ago. 2016 was a long time ago. We are in 2020. You could be it could have been just like saying you were in the medieval times, because in 2020 we are going through a lot, and a lot is happening. So I mean, this pretty much took the wind. That incident took the wind out of Black Lives Matter sails, and they kind of pretty much went underground. Well, not really. They turned their efforts away from the streets and started advocating and lobbying politicians and corporate entities, and started moving in on social media, and started butting up with other groups around, like uh, our little buddies we know as Antifa. They started to become friends with them on social media, and I think that's where they started to learn some of the tactics that Antifa love to display. And Antifa is the next subject in this whole deep dive about Black Lives Matter's authoritarianism, and this is the key word: the authoritarian side of Black Lives Matter. Because after like 20 from 2017 to 2020, Black Lives Matter has pretty much stepped away and has tried to establish political influences, and they have done so, especially on the West Coast. But Antifa came to shine in 2016 because they started ramping up their anti-government, anti-Trump attacks, because they are the Antifa, anti-fascists, and they said, oh, Trump's a fascist, so we're going to fight and attack him. So Antifa showed up just in time. So they started going after Trump won the election, they started going after the electors. They started going to their houses. They started harassing them. They wanted them to make them change their votes so they would vote for Hillary Clinton, get her in, and screw over Donald Trump. But that didn't work. So Antifa had to step it up. So they started. They attacked Trump's inauguration, caused like what $100 million worth of damage or something like that. Massive amounts of damage, massive amounts of chaos. Then they did it so again. They incited the riots that happened in Charlottesville where somebody was killed. And of course, then the media spun what Donald Trump said. Good people on both sides. Forget, that's a whole other ball of yarn. Remember, I don't want to talk about the media. It's so hard not to because, the media, has a big role to play in this. But anyway, I saw the videos of Charlottesville of people on the ground. Antifa and some of those black supremacists were there and made it impossible for people who were just trying there to, at the time, remember, this was around defending statues. And now look where we are in 2020. Statues are coming down because this is round two. This is the authoritarian. But back then, it was Antifa, and of course, they made it impossible to keep it peaceful. They incited the riots. They attacked people. I saw it. It was crazy video footage. Some stuff that would make some people get squeamish. It was pretty nuts. But I mean, in 2018, 2019, they would continue the same tactics. Whenever there was a hot button issue going on politically or culturally, they would be there. They would be screaming there. They're pretty much chanting "Death to America." That's pretty much what they are. Anti-American, like, fascists. The anti-fascists are the fascists who just hate America and want to change it into a communist. They're radical communists who use fascistic tactics. That is Antifa. It's very hard to pin them down because they would say, "Ooh, we're a loose, nebulous thing. It just means anti-fascist." No, they are connected. They have groups. They have merchandise. they have specific logos for individual groups. So yeah, Antifa is not just an idea. It is it's a group. And hopefully some punishments will be coming their way soon, and there is going to be more developing on that, but I'm not going to talk about that because I have no clue. I mean, they're being investigated for international terrorist ties, so yeesh, that's a woo on that one. But so they kept on attacking in 2018, 2019, attacking Trump supporters, even attacking moderates who wouldn't get on board. So by the time 2020 comes around, and of course, there's the whole little virus floating around, but I'm not. That's separate. Even though that does play a part too, that has pent up energy that a lot of people kept inside all this time. They have to release that energy somehow, so that did contribute, but I'm not going to talk about the virus. But so 2020 comes around, and you have Antifa, who are pretty much despised by a large portion of this country. And then at this time, you have BLM, who's now rich and has grifted largely off of the whole mantra and false narrative of Black Lives Matter, even though they're not actually talking about maybe like the dozens of people, hundreds of people who get shot and killed in Chicago every year. Those Black Lives Matter? No, they just specifically talk about a certain group of Black lives that matter. So when you hear their protesters saying, "Oh, well, we're protesting for the countless lives of people who have been murdered by the police," well, I'm sorry, the statistics don't support that, but they ignore those statistics. So they've grifted largely off of a false narrative while simultaneously gaining power over the minds of the elected officials, and then all the while in 2020 now they're joining forces with Antifa following the death of, we now know, George Floyd, and of course I'm going to throw Rayshard Brooks in there too. And they're using the same tactics as Antifa to get what they want. If you see what happened in Minneapolis, they burned down almost pretty much entire center chunk area of the city. They took over and destroyed a police precinct. They burned down a pawn shop, and now a couple months later, they found a dead body inside that pawn shop. They killed an innocent person who was just like at their store. What does this have to do about Black lives? And you can see now, because they have joined forces with Antifa, they are now more bold. They are now demanding certain things. See, they're more refined with their tactics. Instead of just chanting and walking around the streets and saying horrid things like pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon, which you're allowed to do, that's fine. That's protesting. But now they've amped it up. They stepped it up to, they're demanding things, and if they don't get it, they go to an individual's house. But here's the dealio. This is the problem. They're getting it. They have gotten it up to this point, and that's where I'm going to get to. I'm getting close to where present day. They've been able to taste that sweet nectar of authoritarianism, and they want more. So they started to go after statues, okay? And they started to print murals all over public property. And if other people try to do the same thing, they get arrested. So now we have the state backing what Black Lives Matter is doing. Whatever they did during 2017 to 2020 behind the scenes to butter these people up and get them on their side and get the political influence they need to do these things, they've done a bang-up job on that end. I don't know who's done. I think Barack Obama was quarterbacking a lot of that, because I remember when this happened with Trayvon Martin back in 2013, and he injected himself into this before the trial, before all the facts are out and we knew what exactly was going on. Obama dropped the seed for that narrative where he said that America has always struggled with racism and racial issues. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Thanks for like throwing back racial relations 50 years back to the civil rights era. Thank you. Thanks, Obama. So, I mean, you got BLM demanding change, and they have now the backing of the state, and on the streets they have the backing of Antifa. and they're starting to attack federal forces. They're starting to go on people's property, like the people in St. Louis, the McCloskeys, who were defending their own private property with their weapons. The state comes in, takes their weapons away, and the BLM people, they had weapons. They were threatening them. Nobody was arrested, I don't believe, anything like that. I'm just shuffling through some notes here, but they've increased the severity of their protests. I mean, Antifa created Chaz, and there was Black Lives Matter protests all around there. But then apparently, a black kid, just a young kid, was joyriding. He gets gunned down, and and a bunch of other people were killed there too. And oh yeah, so very peaceful, these protests, right? I mean, so now we've gotten to the point where they think they have amassed enough support and have intimidated enough people into compliance that they're trying to become just like the mafia and extort local businesses. So now, with all that preamble, with all that backstory, now we're going to get into this actual piece of documentation here. I'm going to read through this, trying to get through it quickly here. But this is what Black Lives Matter is demanding of local businesses in Louisville, Kentucky, and it's just astonishing. So, 2, business owners and stakeholders of the Nulu Business District and the Business Association. Reparations and representation of the Nulu Market District. Dear Nulu business owners, stakeholders, and board members, the residents of Louisville, Kentucky are standing strong, educated, and together to express the destruction your business has caused to low-income communities, specifically those with majority black residents. We therefore demand representation and reparations in the Nulu district or business district of Louisville for the gentrification, which is pretty much a white takeover of minority neighborhoods and stuff like that. For the gentrification that has taken place, the policies and processes of revitalizing the Nulu district. So this district was already run down from before, and business owners came in and have been turning the district around, has been prospering, has been bringing more people into the district, more job opportunities, all these things. But these people are going to complain about that. So the policies and processes of the revitalization of the Nulu has displaced, marginalized people from homes their families have often resided for generations. And I guess for generations they were also falling apart, single-handedly progressing the gentrification of black neighborhoods. This process has been happening to black, indigenous, and persons of color at the hands of white, heterosexual patriarchy since the inception of this nation we call home. I don't know what being straight has to do with this. That's one of the things that really just weird me out. Why does it have to be this whole heterosexual thing? I don't get it. Patriarchy is male dominated, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then black folks with an X. Now, the X means they don't want to determine whether or not you're a male or a female, or if you think you're a folk or not. So the X means whatever. See, it's really weird. They even change language for their ideology. It's really intense and insane. So black folks can't have their own space when wealthy white folks see an opportunity to make more money. I mean, that's very prejudicial towards white people there. I mean, I'm sure that they're not just trying to make the money for themselves. I'm sure that they're trying to make business and trying to make it profitable and maybe help out the community around them. That's what a lot of businesses, especially if they're like single owners, not like corporate, because corporate is crony in my opinion, and that's where the rot comes from. So if you plant a Walmart right in the middle of like a poor low income place, dude, come on, I know exactly what you're doing. But a mom and pop that was there for a while, or who's trying to start up and like try to actually help the community members around them, I see what it's night and day difference there. Okay. So, Gentrification is a palatable term that sugarcoats one more aspect of an oppressive system targeted by black folks or at black folks for 400 years. Oh, yes, my 400 years of slavery argument. We are here today to demand representation over tokenism. I mean, they hire who they hire. They hire the best person for the job. And I'm sure that uh, if the one or two black people that are working there, it's just one or two. It's because one or two black people made an application. They decide to hire them, or maybe out of the 30 people that put in applications, maybe 4 of them were black, and they hired one. And then out of the 26 white people or so, I'm just throwing numbers out there. They hired 4 because they only need like 5 employees. I don't know. Don't what do you? I mean, come on. What is this? What are you so angry about? Come on. We are here today. No, I just already read that. Assist the collective in achieving equity and inclusion by signing the attached blank, agreeing to meet the following demands enlisted below. Now, this is some stuff right here. For business owners and nonprofits in Lulu, our demands are as follows. Now, listen, these are demands, okay? Businesses will adequately represent the black population of Louisville by having a minimum of 23% black staff, including management, in front of house positions, and maintain commitment and accountability to increasing that number. Accountability roundtable, information, whatever. Okay, retail locations will include a minimum of 23% inventory of black retailers, so they have to buy from black people 23% of the time. Buy their stock that they sell to other, like your customers, you have to buy from other retailers, so it's 23% black. Or make a recurring monthly donation of 1.5% of net sales to, and I assume it was listed here that is in like black charities or black nonprofits or anything like that. And like that sounds like extortion now, doesn't it? Business owners will require diversity, equity, and inclusion training for their staffs to be conducted by any one of the blanks on the attached list. Training will be conducted thereafter on a biannual basis. Now, who's doing this training? Are these people licensed? Now, remember, none of this is actually sanctioned or legal. These contracts are not binding. None of this is legal because there's no actual like stamp of like approval. You can't get that notarized or anything like that because they're not licensed. It's not legal. This is literally just like mafioso tactics going on here. Customize your own displays of one of the attached blanks, I guess, like pictures in a visible location with your business to increase awareness and show support for the reparations movement. And then nonprofits in the Nulu district will submit to a voluntary. Don't you love that? Our demands are that you voluntarily submit external audit of their board of trustees. Actually, no, submit to a voluntary. So no, you don't actually voluntarily submit. You submit straightforward just to something that is voluntary. What? Anyway, to external audit of their board of trustees to take necessary steps toward 23% representation on the boards. Wow. And this is the same thing as the business owners. They tell them what we're going to do and stuff like that. But this right here, but this is hilarious right here. I, a business owner in the gentrified Nulu business district, so it just is gentrified, I guess, understand that gentrification targets poor and disadvantaged communities of color, and as such, I acknowledge that the original residents of Louisville community, which was demolished to make way for Nulu, have been harmed by displacement and a resulting loss of community connection, representation, and support. The city signed off, the citizens signed off on this for it to happen. I don't get why they're mad of their own choices. I acknowledge that my business has played a part in the harm done to the original residents who have received no economic benefit from our occupation. Okay. Displaced residents are denied the employment opportunities promised by the gentrifiers who destroy their community. Why don't they put in an application? I don't understand. Instead, they've been effectively banned through economic disparity and intentional policies from the communities they built and neighborhoods where they grew up. Show me the policies then. Show them to me. I want to see those policies. I want to see those policies where they targeted those people, so where they did not give them opportunities. I want to see that. I want to see it. And if it's there, sue them. Sue them. Don't force them to submit to your tactics of oppression. Just sue them through the legal system. Oh, but no. The legal system is geared against you. That's right. I'm sorry. You have to use ulterior motives, correct? I acknowledge that the original community members were replaced by business owners and clientele uneducated about the history of the space they now occupy, because I guess every space has a history. I acknowledge that many of the clerks, or many of the original residents, were repatriated into communities that their presence and identity have not been validated, but rather they have been actively rejected. Okay, well, explain. Can you give us some more detail about how that occurs? I am therefore committed to participating in remediation for the harm that gentrification has caused to the original residents in terms representation, education, and validation. So representation is the same stuff that I already read before about the 1.5% and stuff like this. Then education is, of course, those classes. And then, of course, I love this. They didn't tell you beforehand, but additionally, I accept responsibility for the costs of the initial and quarterly training. So you also have to foot the bill for the trainings, too. And then, of course, validation is about, I validate about the people who lived here and stuff like that. But then they also said eliminate dress codes for clients, customers, and staff. That's the only thing that I halfway agree with. And then display the attached written statement. Yeah, bend, bow. Yes, my overlords. Now, here's the final bit of this. Now, here's where the Antifa side steps in, I would assume, is the repercussions of non-compliance. So remember, if you don't submit to that voluntary audit, then here's the repercussions. Failures to accept and adhere to this contract will result in the following measures: reduction of racial index score, bias report on the Better Business Bureau, whatever. Social media blast, notification via all social media platforms of non-compliance. So they are telling you right there that they use social media as a weapon. Boycott, public boycott coordinated through social media and mail announcements of your Nulu district and any other businesses you own. So you could own businesses halfway across the country or just down the street. They'll still go to those places too. Protest then. Visible media cover demonstrations, sit in outside your establishment. I think they're going to do more than just sit in, right? And this last one's kind of fun. Invasive reclamation. Placement of booths, tables outside your establishment where competing black proprietors will offer items comparable to those offered by you. So you're literally, they'll have kiosks outside your door with black guys out there saying, "Hey, buy my stuff. Don't buy from him. He's racist." That's something like where are the cops? This is insane. And then here they have like, I will sign dotted line physical address. Really, this is not binding. None of this is legally binding at all. You can take that and shove it up your ass if I was them. And I think the people have come to this point where they are done with this, because this is, I think, we're near the end of the video, but this is what I'm going to show you here. This is now in Seattle, where protesters are trying to still go to city officials' houses, and this one, in this case, was the police chief, Carmen Best, at her home, and finally, the average citizen, the neighborhood residents, finally showed up with their guns and said, go peacefully protest somewhere else, because we've seen what your peaceful protests turn into, because Black Lives Matter and Antifa are now one in the same thing. A protest will turn into a riot just as quicker than you can say cat in a hat.
Cops are coming. We'll peacefully assemble up on the private road. Get out of here. There's a private drive. Get out of the road.
You point to the gun. I am pointing the gun. We are here to peacefully assemble.
No. Peacefully assemble in somebody else's fucking neighborhood.
We are peaceful.
Go.
You point to the gun at my face.
Yep.
That's why you're peaceful.
There you go. That's why you're peaceful right now.
You're not peaceful.
Stop. Enough.
We don't have guns. You're the ones with guns.
Thank you.
Protesters walking, and you draw your weapons. That's what happened here.
I have a fucking license for it.
We don't have weapons.
This was public property. Our taxpayers pay for those roads. We have a right to walk there.
We're looking for our friends. We don't care about you guys.
Quit yelling at me. Quit yelling at me.
And that's a lie. We're just looking for our friends. We don't know. We don't want to do anything to you guys. Yeah. As soon as you got down there, as soon as you start protesting, and then somebody starts spray painting, then somebody starts kicking stuff, and then somebody starts throwing rocks. See, that's what happens. It escalates. It always does. And this is where we've come to. And now the people are going to be like, nope, it's enough. And I really think now the wind is going to be out of Black Lives Matter sales and Antifa sales now, because I'm going to tie this video up here. The leaked body cam footage of George Floyd's arrest has come out, and it raises a lot of questions, and it raises a lot of doubts about whether or not these cops are going to actually be found guilty of what they're being charged with, because he was resisting arrest. He was in the car. He was going nuts. He was on drugs. He was screaming, crying, begging. He actually said, "Put me on the ground. Put me on the ground." And they did. So this video is going to make it very, very difficult for this narrative, this false narrative, to keep moving forward of, I can't breathe, hands up, don't shoot. 2-0 for those false narratives there, Black Lives Matter. You're not looking too good. But anyway, I think I'm about wrapping that up. It was a little bit of a longer video, but I really wanted to break this down, where I thought it started, where I thought it came from, all this stuff. And I just thought that I just need to get that out there and wrap this up with where we are now. So I hope you guys like that. If you want to check out more, always check out some of my past videos. You can always hit me up on my Twitter here. I got a Parler. I'm going to be the Swamp Cleaner on Parler. And I also have a BitChute. Check out some of my videos there if I ever get deleted on YouTube. So I will catch you guys later. All right. Bye.